Hello, and welcome to my Modlist showcase, where I give an overview and opinion on mod lists to help find the right one for you. This time we are looking at Living Skyrim for Skyrim Special Edition by user ForgottenGlory. The version I have been playing on is version 3.1.0, released on the 21st of March 2021. But it has been updated since then, so be sure to check the Living Skyrim Discord, where ForgottenGlory posts new updates and changes. Firstly, what is Living Skyrim? The description reads, Living Skyrim is a full-featured overhaul of Skyrim SE, with the intent to breathe life into the often empty areas of the world. NPCs, quests, new world spaces, and interactive content are the focus of the mod list. All of this on top of a beautiful graphics package intended for higher-end PCs. Living Skyrim is available for download from the Wabbajack Modlist installer. While I won't cover the specifics in this video, I will say that the installation process was incredibly easy and came with a set of very clear instructions on the Living Skyrim webpage. Being one of the largest mod lists on Wabbajack, holding over 800 mods, the download did take me a long while, although I don't have a very good internet myself, so it's just one of those things that will vary from person to person. Once in game, setting up specific mod configurations in the menu is quite long and tedious, but clear instructions are provided. Now for what the mod list adds. For this showcase I'll be showing my low level character, but I have played many hours on previous versions of the mod list, so I have a good grasp on what it's like to play. While graphics are always subjective, I definitely believe Living Skyrim to be one of the best looking mod lists out there, especially for a pack where new quests and content is the main focus. The new textures feel less like a new look to Skyrim, and more like a fresh coat of paint to the vanilla game, which has always been my personal preference. The weather is also great, enhancing the feeling of Skyrim. I particularly loved a blizzard that happened up on Bleak Falls Barrow, where I truly felt like I was on a mountain expedition. The new character models are also a big plus, as again they feel like an upgrade to the originals, rather than completely new people. It's also worth noting the performance, which I was very impressed by. My specs are here on screen, and while I know it's quite high end and might not be useful for a lot of people, I was running at 1440p ultra wide, so I'd expect the same performance I'm getting on say a GTX 1080 at 1080p. I never had a dip below 50 FPS, and held way above 60 for many areas. I used to play on an older version of Living Skyrim, and in the Rift I used to get 40 FPS, whereas now I get 55. So there's been some great optimization work behind the scenes. Although because this is a heavily modded Skyrim, when I tried to record my FPS tanked, so please forgive any stutters on the video, especially during combat. Living Skyrim doesn't aim to be a survival simulator like some mod packs, however it still provides a balanced challenge for those who want it. Almost every aspect of the game has been touched upon, with more spells, enchantments, jobs, crafting. I could go on and on. Yet something I love about this mod pack is that despite all the mods, it still feels like Skyrim, just everything is more in depth and there's a lot more of it. Even though more loot is added into the game, the main way to get it is from the people you kill and chests in dungeons, which balances things out nicely, as those two things are harder to do than vanilla Skyrim. Because there's just so much to do, but the mod pack has a slow and fair progression, it means a normal playthrough could take you an incredibly long time, but feel rewarding all the way. The most noticeable combat mods in Living Skyrim are Blade and Blunt, the Ultimate Dodge mod, and Archery gameplay overhaul. The AI feels more aggressive when they know they have the upper hand, and will group together to make fights very difficult if unprepared. Stamina is now something you need to keep much more of an eye on, as it's used more frequently and gives debuffs when exhausted. The Ultimate Dodge mod is good, but I made some adjustments to it in the mod configuration menu, as I found myself dodge rolling around too much like I'm playing Dark Souls. On top of this, the bows feel much more satisfying than vanilla Skyrim, and mage builds are so diverse that you could have multiple playthroughs and never play the same build twice. Overall, the combat offers a good challenge with AI that tops vanilla Skyrim, although I do have a couple gripes, one being that many enemies felt spongy even as I got better gear, but that's because I'm used to playing mods with high damage multipliers on both me and the enemies, and secondly I encountered a couple of strange animations on enemies, such as enemies with daggers which got up to my face and started dodge rolling around loads. The name Living Skyrim comes from the goal to fill Skyrim with stuff to do and see around every corner, and I can safely say that goal was achieved. There's so many changes and add-ons to the game's quests and lands that I've barely touched the surface. Some places have some small extra detail, whereas other places are almost unrecognisable. It feels like the land of Skyrim is much more populated and full of life. I found myself getting lost in areas of Skyrim I've been to many times before, exploring all the new things it has to offer, and quests I've completed what feels like 100 times felt completely new. Not to say it doesn't feel like Skyrim anymore, it's not an entirely new game, just more stories within it. Having played Skyrim over and over, the new content really breathes life into the game, and makes me more compelled to explore. There are still a couple of small gripes I have. One is that with much more stuff in Skyrim, the map can sometimes feel a bit small and cramped at times. I like areas of the map where you're wandering through empty wilderness, whereas now you're much more likely to bump into a camp. It's definitely not overkill with the content, I just wish I could take the map of Skyrim and sort of stretch it to be bigger. Another minor problem I have is that the new quests can vary in quality. For the most part they are great and have been well chosen, but the occasional quest does have some weak writing, and a big break to my immersion is when an NPC has poor audio quality or just doesn't quite match the same as everyone else.
You got guts, stranger. 2 feral wolves. But you didn't flinch. Train my arrows on most. Say, that's close enough.
Aside from the rare, bad audio from NPCs, the audio is great all around. It really makes the world feel alive. The music is also good, although I did turn off the new music mod simply because I love Skyrim's soundtrack so much. I think this is a category you best just hear for yourself.
Just stand still!
With all the new content comes a lot of new items, and I mean a lot. Chests and looted bodies will never feel the same. There's weapons to fill every need, and all feel well balanced. They all fit well into Skyrim's world, and simply offer more customization, which is never a bad thing. The same goes for armor as well, which made me want to put points into smithing just so I could craft more of these cool looking armors. There's a bunch of new foods and trinkets as well. Much like with everything in this mod list, if it's in vanilla Skyrim, there's more of it here. Just some other things which are worth noting. Now the world is populated with many more NPCs in towns, cities and bandit camps. The character customization offers everything you could want, although it did get a bit buggy with me a couple times. The Valkyrie mod is used for the perk overhaul, which offers a diverse and balanced amount of new perks. And finally, the HUD looks much cleaner and customizable than vanilla. And now remember, the mod list author has nothing to do with any additional mods or tweaks you make. It's not recommended unless you know what you're doing and the consequences are yours to deal with. Now I personally enjoy survival mods, so if you're anything like me, I wouldn't recommend adding anything too complex. A mod like Frostfall would likely cause a lot of problems and just be a pain trying to get to work with all the new armors. For a mod where weather affects your character, I'd recommend trying Frostbite, which is rather simple, but it gives all the basics you'd want for a survival weather mod. For food and hunger mods, I'd recommend trying Vitality mode, which again is rather basic, but it gives all the hunger properties you could want. And finally, personally, I'd recommend something that increases the damage output of yourself and enemies, if you're like me and enjoy fights to be over within a couple of hits. Overall, I think I can safely say that Living Skyrim is one of my favourite mod packs I've ever tried. It really excels in making Skyrim feel like it had a few more years of development and added content, rather than a completely new game. There's so many new experiences to have. It reminds me of playing a D&D game where there's just stuff to do everywhere and you can interact with whatever you want around every corner. If you played Skyrim before and knows the ins and outs of everything, this mod list is perfect for you. There's so much new content that you can ignore all the content from the vanilla game if you wished. If you're looking for a hardcore survival experience, then this might not be the one for you. Although I will say, hardcore survival is my personal preference, and yet I regard this as one of my favourite mod lists. Boasting over 800 mods, there's very little this doesn't offer, and if you're like me and finally want to sink hundreds of hours into just one character rather than constantly making new characters, then this is absolutely the list for you. Thank you. If you enjoyed the video, could you please leave it a thumbs up? That would be very helpful. And if you want to see more Modpack videos like this, feel free to subscribe. Thank you and farewell.